Hello and welcome to Engine Adventures Part 3 in the Midsize Truck Shootout series. This is the final part, and here we are going over breakover angle, approach and departure angles, underbody skid plating, and ground clearance. In Part 1, we covered the high-speed rough road capabilities of these vehicles. In Part 2, we covered the vehicle's ability to transfer power to the wheels with better traction by climbing a steep, rutted-out hill. In Part 3, we will cover ground clearance, approach, breakover, and departure angles, and underbody protection. Overall, here are the final scores. Let's go ahead and cover the dimensions, protection, and subjective sections. Remember that this is how these vehicles performed on this day, or rather the day they were tested, in the weather conditions they were tested in, the road conditions they were tested in. Things are going to vary a little bit. Vehicles will perform differently over different courses. Take it for what it is. This is my opinion. Don't get all upset about it. It's just what it is. Have fun. Enjoy it. Before getting into this, I wanted to talk a little bit about the protection sections and the part on subjective. So the scoring there is 0 points for no skid plate, 1 point for a plastic skid plate, and 2 points for a metal skid plate. And then on subjective, you can get extra points back. So maybe something's not protected by a skid plate, but it's lifted up and out of the way, so it's not going to get hit by a rock or something on the trail anyway. In the first two parts of this video series, the Ridgeline actually performed really well. But as you can see here, the area where it really suffers the most is approach, breakover, and departure angles, along with underbody protection. And it does have the lowest ground clearance of all the vehicles tested. Here you can see the low ground clearance and the poor breakover angle make it so it just touches. Of course, there was no damage or anything, but it did just barely touch there. For approach, breakover, departure angle, and ground clearance, the Frontier barely outperforms the Ridgeline, but where it really makes up for it is skid plate and underbody protection. Everything is really up out of the way and protected in this thing. However, overall in this category, it lands in a three-way tie for second place because of its excellent underbody protection. Up next, we have the 2020 Ford Ranger FX4 with a decent approach angle, 27.9, that's kind of lower for the group. Breakover angle is about average at 22.7 degrees, and the departure angle of 25.2 is one of the highest in the group, only bested by the Ford Ranger Tremor. But ground clearance sits at 8.2 inches, which hurts a little bit, and it actually places in 5th place, but with the three-way tie for second, taking 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, it's not that far down the list. And the reason why is it actually scores pretty well with a bash plate and a plastic fuel skid plate, but while lacking an oil pan skid plate, the oil pan's up high and out of the way, and so are any of the other important components. Next up, we have the 2021 Ford Ranger Tremor, and it's part of that three-way tie for second place with the 3rd highest approach angle, which is 30.9 degrees, with a breakover of 24.2 and a departure of 25.5, which is the second best in the group. Ground clearance is also up about 1.5 inches to 9.7 versus the FX4, but the skid plate and protection is about the same. So bash plate is steel, oil pan, it has no protection, and the fuel tank has a plastic skid plate. Again, 2 points subjective for having the unprotected components lifted up and out of the way. Next up, we have the 2021 Jeep Gladiator Rubicon EcoDiesel. And as you probably already know, this one is going to take first place. It has the best approach angle in the group with 43.6 degrees. Breakover is actually on the lower end at 20.3, and the departure is also the best in the group at 26 degrees. Ground clearance comes in at 11.1 inches, a full inch above the nearest competitor. And of course, skid plate protection is really good with a good bash plate that's steel and a good fuel tank skid plate that's also steel, but there is no protection over the oil pan. The saving grace here is that it's up high and out of the way and really unlikely to be hit. Next up is the 2022 Chevy Colorado ZR2. The approach angle is pretty good at 30 degrees, breakover 23.5, and departure also 23.5. It's kind of in the middle, which with the 10-inch ground clearance and good protection as far as the front end goes, there's no skid plate over the fuel tank at all. It does end up in 6th place for this category, but overall it ends up in 1st place, tied with the Jeep Gladiator Rubicon. So despite its shortcomings here, it makes up for it in other areas. Following the ZR2 both in chronological order and in ranking, here is the 2022 GMC Canyon AT4. The approach angle is 29.5 degrees with a breakover of 25.4 and a departure of 20.4. Ground clearance is 9.6, and it has a steel skid plate over the front radiator bash plate and then also a steel skid plate over the oil pan, but it doesn't have any fuel tank protection, just like the ZR2. Overall, comes in 7th place. Finishing out the three-way tie for 2nd place is the 2023 Nissan Frontier Pro 4X. Really good approach angle of 32.3 degrees, breakover isn't great at 19.6, and the departure is pretty good at 23 degrees. Ground clearance is acceptable at 9.5, and then the skid plate package is really good with a steel bash plate up front, a steel oil pan skid plate, and then a plastic skid plate over the fuel tank. Overall, its average is really pretty good, which is why it ends up in the three-way tie for 2nd place. Next up is the 2023 Toyota Tacoma TRD Pro. You're seeing images here of a 2020 because I didn't have this footage on the 23. Anyway, approach angle 36.4, which is really good. Breakover of 26.6, again, pretty darn good. And a departure of 24.7, which is also great. The ground clearance is 9.4, which is okay, and it does have good protection for the front bash plate and the oil pan, but it's lacking transfer case protection, and the fuel tank skid plate is plastic, which brings it down a little bit. And the total score for this area, this category, places the Tacoma at number 8, even if it does feel like it performs a little better than that. As far as dimensions go, just the way the spreadsheet worked out, it comes in at number 8. For protection underneath, you see everything is kind of lifted up and out of the way. The transmission there's up, the transfer case is protected until we get to the fuel tank. It is completely unprotected. You can see the whole plastic tank there. It is up flush with the frame rail. It's not above it like the other unprotected components, so there is some risk there. Approach, breakover, and departure angles are 30.5, 21, and 22.4 respectively, with 9.5 inches of ground clearance. It doesn't have much in the way of protection at all. So the bash plate is plastic, there's no protection over the oil pan, no protection over the fuel tank, and it does get a subjective score of 2 because some of these items are lifted up out of the way. But overall, it doesn't score that well, which puts it in 9th place. For the dimensions and protection category, the rankings are as follows. And coming in 10th place, we have the 2020 Honda Ridgeline. It actually performed really well overall. It just doesn't have the dimensions, ground clearance, and protection to be used regularly as an off-road truck. Following that is the 2023 Chevy Colorado Trail Boss, which actually performed pretty well, but it really didn't do great in the protection area, which just brings it down to number 9. Again, we are in great company here when the 2023 Toyota Tacoma comes in 8th place. Overall, this is an excellent truck for off-road use. It just doesn't have the dimensions and protection to perform well in this specific category. After that, in 7th place is the 2022 GMC Canyon AT4, which was just kind of mediocre across the board. It had some areas where it was stronger, some areas where it wasn't, and comes in at number 7 overall. And coming in 6th place is the 2022 Chevy Colorado ZR2. It just doesn't have the dimensions and protection that some of these other trucks do. This is an excellent off-road truck, but this particular category, it suffers a little bit. Coming in fifth place is the 2020 Ford Ranger FX4. It performs pretty well, kind of middle of the pack as far as the dimensions and protection go, which gives it a solid fifth place finish. Moving on to the triple for second place is the 2020 Nissan Frontier Pro 4X, 2023 Nissan Frontier Pro 4X, and 2021 Ford Ranger Tremor. All three of these vehicles perform really well between their dimensions and their protection. They just kind of equal out, but if I had to choose one of these, I would take the Tremor as the most capable, but the better driving vehicle would be the 2023 Frontier Pro 4X. And coming in at a solid first place is the 2021 Jeep Gladiator Rubicon. Excellent approach and departure angles, breakover is okay, and really good ground clearance, really good protection. This is what the Jeep is designed for. It's kind of in a class of its own. You'll see in the overall rankings it ties for first place with another vehicle, but in this category it just hammers the competition. Its average place finish was like 1.75. The nearest competitors, that triple that tied for second place, is 4.25. So it really outranks the others by a large margin. And coming back to the final overall rankings, we're going to burn through these quick. Number 10, Honda Ridgeline with an average rank of 9.25. 2022 GMC Canyon AT4 at 7.5, Chevy Colorado ZR2 at 6, 2023 Tacoma TRD Pro at 5, Nissan Frontier Pro 4X 2020 at 4.775, and then the 23 Nissan Frontier Pro 4X comes in just above that at 4.5. The 2020 Ford Ranger FX4 comes in at 4 1/8. 2021 Ford Ranger Tremor's average ranking was 4, and the 2021 Gladiator along with the 2022 Chevy Colorado ZR2 both had an average ranking of 2.5 across all of the three-part series of testing. This, however, is not how I would choose my vehicle. My favorite driving truck out of all of these came in at number 8. This is how the spreadsheets worked out, and it really depends on the type of terrain you want to drive and really the feel of the vehicle you're going for. You can't make a bad decision in this group. The Honda Ridgeline is by far the best vehicle on-road. It's the most roomy inside, best ride, just kind of the best useful vehicle as far as non-off-road use and non-towing use. The Chevy Colorado ZR2 is a good mix between the two. I really wish they had a selectable locker instead of the G80, but its 2.7 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine just performs amazing. It can tow really well, it drives really well, and that's why it's my number one pick if I had to daily drive one of these. If I were really into rock crawling or steady off-roading, consistent off-roading, probably go with the Gladiator Rubicon. I haven't tested a Mojave. That one could be up there as well. And then for daily living, hunting, living on a long dirt road, the ZR2 would definitely take the lead here. It does excellent at really high-speed off-road, by far the best. The other ones weren't even close, and you can see the Toyota Tacoma comes in second there, but that's a distant second place. Even though it felt much smoother off-road, it just didn't have quite the ability to go as fast as the ZR2 over the high-speed rough terrain. I hope you enjoyed this video series. It was really fun to test all of these vehicles and fun to compare them. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post new videos. Give me a thumbs up and comment down below. If you have any questions or comments, obviously comment down below. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, and what you would have liked to have seen different. Thanks again for watching. Have a great day.